Ooh, what's up and welcome into this postgame podcast of the Program Guys podcast. Mason Prince joins you as always by Mark Hall, Matt Gann, Patrick Hertzberger. No Ryan Tyson today. The Oklahoma Sooners fall in Fort Worth, Texas, 55-24. We are here to recap the game itself. Be sure to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at Program Guys with a Z, Instagram Program Guys with a Z, our Facebook page Program Guys Podcast. However you get your podcast, that's where you can find us: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever. All right, boys. This is how I want to start. 55-24. Give me one word that describes how you're feeling right now. Matt, I'll start with you. As Mark pounds his beer.
Yep. Disastrous is the only word that I can think of. I'm sure the guys will use a lot of other synonyms that will pretty much go with that, but disastrous is the word that comes to mind.
Patrick, out in California.
Disappointed. I'm super disappointed on how we started off this game and how the whole game went. I was not expecting that after our loss last week.
Mark?
Disheartened is my word. I had high hopes for the season, for the game, and I think we saw a lot of the same issues and more issues pop up. It's a little humbling.
Gutted. I'm gutted. That's where I'm at. We'll get into it as we break down this game, guys. We'll start with the offensive performance. Little stats to look at: 176 total yards passing for the offense, 179 rushing. I'm trying to get the total, like what that total yard is. 355, 6 for 18 on third downs, 1 for 3 on fourth down. What'd you see from the offense, Matt? I'll start with you.
Not a lot, to be honest with you. There's just not a whole lot there. There's maybe a couple bright spots with Javonte Barnes coming in there, having 20 plus carries for over 100 yards. But other than that, a lot of that's garbage time. A lot of that's when the game's not in hands, right? But it's good to see that when an injury comes with Marcus Major, obviously having an undisclosed injury, whatever that
Eric
might
Gray.
be. Yeah. And
Eric Gray injured during the game too.
Yeah, I think the main thing that stuck out to me was, again, we got punched in the mouth. We won the kickoff. We decided to get the ball, which I thought was the right move.
Which I loved. I loved
the move, and then we fumble and get punched right in the mouth with a touchdown. Biggest thing comes to mind is third down conversions. Again, even when DG was in the game, we go 6 for 18. I think I saw a stat when it's 3rd and 7+. We're one of the worst teams in conversion rates of doing that, and that's because our first and second down play calling is absolutely, and I'll use my word again, disastrous. So I don't know what else I can say at this point from an offensive standpoint.
Yeah, just a little background, and then Mark, I want to jump to you. Marcus Major was announced before the game. He wasn't going to play. He didn't suit up. People were guessing it was from that rolled ankle in the fourth quarter against Kansas State last week. So he didn't play. So Javonte Barnes stepped up. Eric Gray injured during the game. So it really was the Javonte Barnes show for the majority of the day. Mark, what'd you see?
Yeah, it was good to see Javonte. He looked very good. He looked ready for the show. That's good to see, especially in light of, hey, maybe he knew that he was going to play with Marcus Major out, but we certainly did not know. Betting markets had Marcus Major rushing props up until game time. So no one knew until game time. On a larger level, though, it was disheartening, again, to see a lot of the same issues out of Dylan Gabriel before he goes out. I certainly don't want to pile on him. We hope that he's okay. I'm really glad he got up and walked off the field, but still overthrowing guys. It's the one specific problem, and it persists throughout everything. That's got to get wrapped up, or the offense is never going to take the step forward that we keep thinking they're capable of. Yeah. And I mean, past that, man, we'll get into it more. The offensive line wasn't good. We got beat all over the place. They ran a 3-man front the same way we ran a 3-man front, except their guys were running downhill the whole time at us and establishing the line of scrimmage. It's just top to bottom, not a good offensive showing.
Pat?
Sorry, I was on mute. You covered Dylan and the offensive line struggle, so I'll go ahead and cover play calling. In my opinion, was bad. We had like 10 jet sweeps again, lateral throws again. Play calling that doesn't make sense with how many yards are left in the drive. Like so many third and longs because we're not setting ourselves up for success. and then throwing deep balls where there's double coverage and the deep ball doesn't make sense to throw. We need to keep it simple and help out our offense where we can. And the play calling just didn't match that today, in my opinion.
No.
So to some degree, I do think we saw a lot of that with Davis Bevel in the game. And it was actually Jeff Levy trying to protect his guy with easy plays. So I don't know how critical I want to be on play calling towards the end of the game when it's like, yeah, you're right. 2nd and 10. Why are we running a jet sweep? It's because Davis Bevel can't handle the pocket on a 2nd and 10.
Yeah.
That's the larger problem to me.
So, look, I'm just going to speak plainly here. We're in trouble. We are. This offense isn't what it's supposed to be right now. RG3, the commentator for the game, as much as I hate him as a commentator, he had a very, very good point about Dylan Gabriel and his inaccuracy. And it's that when he sets up to throw, his feet are on the outside of his body, outside of his shoulders, which causes him to sail things all the time, which is what we've seen him do all season long, what Mark just hit on. The accuracy issues were there again for Dylan. I've said it week in and week out. He's got to be better. And you know what the scary thing is that we don't have anybody who's better. And like exponentially so, they're much worse. Like Davis Bevel came in the game and we were lost. I actually, through all of the crap that we went through in the first half, before Dylan got injured, I still felt as though, you know what, you're down 3 scores, score once going into halftime, you're down 2 scores going into half. It's a brand new ball game. Yeah, they get the ball, but you get a stop and you're down by 1 score. It's a brand new game. I felt okay. But after Dylan got injured and Davis came in, there was no shot. The offensive line is beyond upsetting. They get road dogged in every matchup they have. There's not a player on that offensive line that I sit there and I'm impressed with, which is wild to say about a guy like Andrew Rame, who's been in that starting position for that long and has the same offensive line coach his entire career. Like, he knows what's expected of him and he continues to perform poorly.
It's a freshman across from him today.
It's unbearable, man. It's just unbearable. The throws aren't there. You got guys dropping balls. Jaden Gibson dropped a ball. That was brutal. I'm mad. But most of all, I'm disappointed because we have the horses out there. They are just not playing up to their standard. And it's beyond frustrating. It's specifically on the offensive side of the ball. Specifically on the offensive side.
Yeah.
To your point early on there, me and Matt were talking about, man, this is what Davis looks like. And it's a bad situation to be thrust into. Like,
Agreed.
All caveats there. No doubt about it. It's a very tough situation to be in. But this is what he looks like when given the opportunity. How little faith do you have in General Booty or Nick Evers to come in? And everyone's got their own flavor, right? Booty or Evers. I'm a Booty man myself.
Yeah, of course.
But if they can't get on the field in that situation when Davis goes 7 of 16 for 50 yards,
right,
we're in a bad place. That's all. There's no better word for it. There's no better phrase for it. We're not set up for success with Dylan out of the game.
By the way, OU loses back-to-back games for the second time in 3 years. It's not fun. Anybody else? Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
I was going to say, we'll talk about, I'll save it for the defensive side of the ball. That just brought a good point. But even when DG was in there, I think in the first quarter, he had like 5 or 6 or maybe 7 overthrows. Yeah. And again, that was just talking to exactly what RG3 was talking about. And he was missing bad. I mean, I think one of the things he said when he overthrew Marvin Mims was like, how do you overthrow Marvin Mims out of all guys on the field? And
you can't.
That's just been an issue all year. And that was the one thing we talked about going into the year was the accuracy of DG. And we just have not seen that consistently enough. I know Tyson the entire time throughout the game, that's all he was saying was overthrow, bad throw. And he's been saying that all year. And the problem just continues. And that's what we can't have. That's why we can't sustain drives, especially on 3rd and 7+ when we're getting ourselves in those situations. And guys are there, guys are running the right routes, and they're just simply being overthrown. And then our defense has to get back on the field. And you see that that's definitely what we don't want. So
to lighten the mood real fast, we should definitely, as an account, just post screenshots of all the texts we get from Ryan throughout the game.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
So that everyone's in on what that experience is like, because it's like a guy on the edge of a cliff and he's like putting a foot over.
Yeah.
And he keeps telling you to pull him back, but he's putting that foot over.
Yeah.
Like, chill out, man. Chill out.
Dude.
I don't know. I was on the ledge with Ryan today. Honestly, I was like ready to put my foot 2 feet out. That was rough.
Yeah, and it's okay. It's a very rough portent for this season, right?
Yeah.
Ryan was like, maybe we'll be good again in 3 years. Come on.
We'll be good again next week. We'll be good again next week.
Well, it's just the talent is there.
It is.
Obviously, we saw something offensively, at least those first 3 weeks that we have not seen since then. The Kansas State defense just showed up and the TCU defense showed up, and we were playing on a house of cards, it seems like. I'm gonna trust coaching to turn that around.
At this point, you have to, because what else are you going to do? But I felt as though TCU knew what we were going to do pretty much every time we went out there.
That's true.
And I don't know if that's just them having a good game plan or us being that predictable. Whatever it is, we got outcoached. And that's bothersome because Jeff Lebby is predicated on wanting to go fast and all this stuff. And to Patrick's point, to run a fast offense like that, if you run these screens and these jet sweeps like you do, a tempo offense is predicated on positive yardage. We've said this so many times. And when you don't get positive yardage on plays, you can't go fast. So that immediately negates any advantage you have by going fast. Yep. It makes no point. There's no point to go fast. And we saw that in the second half because there wasn't a point to. You're already down by 30. So that's why you're going to go fast. There's no point.
I think if we don't hit that, if Braden Willis doesn't oof out that 79-yarder, do we even score a touchdown on that possession? We had no momentum.
I don't think so.
He was the momentum there.
Yeah.
Let us know down below in the comments what you thought of the offense. What needs to change? What needs to get better? What needs to stay the same? Did anybody have a bright spot on the offense besides Javonte Barnes?
No.
Yeah, I didn't either. Marvin Mims can't fumble that ball on the first drive.
Right.
I'm the biggest Marvin Mims fan in the world, and he's the best player on the team. I've said it a million times, but your best player can't do stuff like that. That's
Dan brought up today, and I think it's a great point. Maybe Michael Turk is the best player on the team.
Yeah, I mean Michael Turk.
At this point, maybe. Good God.
I did. So I guess it's not on the offensive side of the ball, but he's an offensive player. When Billy Bowman went down and Jaleel Farouk had to step in as a return man, I thought that he really showed out in that role. Maybe not enough for him to take the job, but obviously he's a guy that we want to continue to try and get the ball in his hands and just create some kind of dynamic offense, because something we've seen is, for as much as the offense is predicated on these deep balls, we're not hitting enough of them. We're not hitting nearly enough of them. So got to create explosive plays however we can. And I think Jaleel Farouk is an awesome weapon for doing that.
Yeah, speaking of that, there was some creative play calling. We did see Jaleel Farouk and Marvin Mims both in the back or in the offensive backfield, almost lining up as a running back. And that was really nice. Marvin Mims came out, did that little out cut on the right, easy completion. So there were some creative play calling, but way too inconsistent to be good enough to sustain drives and all that. Right.
Yeah, predictable. Let us know down below in the comments what you think. All right, moving on to the defense, guys. Something I want to say this out loud just to show you how absurd it is. TCU was closer to having 700 yards of offense than we were to having 400. They had 668 total yards of offense, OU 355. TCU had 307 yards passing, 300 and 61 yards rushing. That's 8.8 yards a carry. That's terrible. They didn't turn the ball over at all. They were 7 for 14 on third downs, like Matt said. Couldn't get them off the field. And that's a thing that has proven true the past 2 weeks, is that this defense cannot get people off the field on third down. And I don't understand it. I'm going to go crazy if I see another receiver running wide open on third down. I don't understand how it happens. Either these guys are poorly coached and they don't know what a coverage is, or they're just bad. And whatever it is, get them off the field. I can't handle it anymore. It's driving me insane. It's the same. I never feel comfortable on third down, no matter the distance. I think they're going to convert it. And you shouldn't feel that way.
One noticeable thing this week specifically was when Billy Bowman went down, we put DeMond Harmon in his place. And man, I really hope he's okay.
I hope he's too.
What we saw at the end of that game is heartbreaking. And
as of 3:55 Central Time on Saturday afternoon, he's going to the hospital, but he has movement in his extremities. Yes. So he's going to the hospital as a precaution. So that's Gabe Eichert reported that. So
awesome. So thoughts and prayers, all of that stuff to him. We want him to be okay. But the defense, we did not move away from that 3-3-5 front, and we put Harmon in Billy Bowman's spot at the top of that defense, and we could easily see the top of the defense getting blown out time after time after time. I think 3 of their touchdowns were on long just busts by the secondary. And past that, it's, Max Duggan on a long quarterback run where you see defensive backs not filling their gaps correctly, or guys just missing tackles. I mean, I don't want to pile on him, but Harmon did miss tackles, and you would expect that Billy Bowman would do a little bit better there. That said, no one would tackled well. I mean, I can't point a single player that I was like, yeah, that guy was on the ball with his tackling. Ethan Downs gave good effort, but I didn't see him in on enough things to really highlight him. It's tough. It's not the same defense we saw the first 3 weeks of the year, and I don't really know why.
3 first half touchdowns over 62 yards for TCU.
I got to piggyback, Mark, real quick. You brought up the long touchdown, the broken cover, or the long QB run, the long pass touchdown. Guys, that all happened in the first quarter of the game. We gave up 240 plus yards and 27 points. This was like the Orange Bowl back a couple years ago, where we gave up 28 points to Alabama. And that was a completely different team. We knew our defense was atrocious then, and we saw it today. A lot of missed tackles, a lot of busted coverages, especially when Billy Bowman went down. That was the longest first quarter of my entire life. I looked at Mark and I said, I cannot believe some of these games are at halftime and we're getting beat 27-10 with 4 minutes left in the first quarter. Unbelievable, the plays that we gave up.
Pat, get in there.
It almost feels stubborn for like how we're playing defense right now, and
it 100% is
what we're putting out there, because
I said that last week.
Yeah. And it's like either two things: the players aren't good enough, or the coaches aren't coaching well enough, or they're not coaching to the players that they have. And that's got to change. And if it, maybe give it another game, but they have to coach the players that they have, or they have to put different players in and give other players a chance to play.
I don't understand why we're not seeing Jaren Kanak on the field.
Yeah.
And
makes no sense.
We haven't heard post-game interviews yet, and I would really hope that somebody asked Brent Venables why Jaren Kanak didn't play like at all, especially with how bad that cheetah position was getting burned today.
Yeah. Deshaun White's got to catch that interception.
It's an easy 7 going the other way.
Yeah, it is.
I totally agree.
And then instead, what is it? It's a tip ball and a first down.
Yeah, the guy catches it.
Yeah,
because today he
was
always going to catch it, right? Like that's just the way that the game went. But you can't lose that. You can't lose that opportunity.
So what we said about the offense, they have the horses. They're just not performing as well. I'm not sure the defense has the horses. I don't think they do. Danny Stutzman, more like Danny Sucks, man. Like he was.
Oh, come on. I'm not doing that with you. I'm not going there.
He was nowhere to be found today. There is no pressure whatsoever. There's none. So the front three, whoever's out there, doesn't matter who's out there. None of them are getting pressure. R. Mason Thomas didn't play today. And who's the other guy that
Marcus
they said?
Stripling.
Marcus Stripling didn't play either. So that front had no pressure. Max Duggan did whatever he wanted to do today. He had all the time in the world, and you can't do that.
And we pointed out the TCU offensive line as a weakness, as something that we might be able to exploit. They held their own.
They did
more than held their own. Did we get a single sack?
Not that I'm aware of.
I don't think so. We got some good pressures. There were a couple of cool blitz designs early that I just loved. But then we just fell into this send 3, drop 8 consistently. And we don't have the horses up front to do that with only 3. And we didn't have the guys in the back to stop them from just settling in at 8 yards, settling in at 10 yards, catching the ball, and then living to play another down or running the ball. We haven't even talked about our run defense.
No.
Our run defense was atrocious. Kendre Miller, RG3 today called him an NFL running back. And if today's any indication, he absolutely is. He averaged a first down a carry against us.
That's insane.
It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. This is not Bijan Robinson. This is not Jahmyr Gibbs at Alabama. This is a dude for TCU. Maybe that's me keeping a standard that clearly they've shown us I shouldn't be keeping, but it's hard to see and reconcile.
And one of the things that bothers me most about this defense is that after the Kansas State game, we heard how many people, whether it's Brent or Ted or the players themselves, say that the tackling has to be better. And it wasn't. It was arguably worse. It was arguably worse. There was a play that stuck out to me in the second quarter. The TCU running back was hit 2 yards in the backfield, shook off Ethan Downs, shook off Deshaun White, and then ran for a first down. Like, what are we doing? Wrap up. I don't understand how we got here. This is not the same team we saw for the first 3 games. And I get it. Those first 3 teams, the competition wasn't as good. I understand. But what happened? Like, legitimately, I want to know what happened. There's no way the messaging changed. There's no way the practices changed. Like, what is different? I don't get it.
If we were going to attribute all of our great tackling the first 3 games to physical practices with full pads and tackling, what has changed the last 2 weeks? Because no one is tackling. No one is wrapping up. No one is doing anything. That's harsh. But no one is making the tackle. No one's breaking down and doing it. We had multiple plays where if one guy just makes the play, we're not giving up scores. We're not giving up first downs. We're possibly flipping the field.
Yeah.
Maybe these players are too cocky. Maybe they think they're going to go in and dominate every game, and they just don't. And last week could have been like, oh, that was a fluke. Don't worry, we got them this week, and then come in with the same attitude, and same thing happens. One of the biggest things, and I know this is like a bigger thing for me, and you guys don't care much, is when players are celebrating and we're down by 20 points. Nothing pisses me off more. Like Trey Morrison, when he basically had a pass interference on a player, and he stopped the big play, even though he fouled him and it wasn't called, and then he celebrates like crazy after. Dude, we're down bad. I don't care about your one single play.
Yeah, were you down by like 20 at that point?
Yeah. I think you're on the defense and you're down by 20. This is embarrassing. You do not celebrate. You get your ass back onto the field and you get ready. Same thing with Willis last week when he flexed on the K-State sideline and we were down by 2 touchdowns. Get on the field and play your game and win before you flex on anyone.
Patrick, you bring up a good point about Trey Morrison, just the cornerback room. How often did they play? We talked about the coverage last week being obviously better than the rushing defense. The rushing defense is one thing I talked about last week. And give credit to TCU. They saw the film. They saw what Deuce Vaughn and Martinez did, and they did exactly that. and almost ran 400 yards rushing. And that's what happens when you can run the football. You can pretty much do whatever you want. And you saw Max Duggan take advantage of our cornerbacks. And we had 7 penalties for 80 yards, and 3 of those were PIs on Woody Washington alone. And he's supposed to be our best coverage corner, and he's not even turning around to see the ball. None of the guys did. It's really weird that we've been so good at covering all year, at least maintaining that, and this week just looked like they were absolutely lost in the back end of every PI. And there was one that didn't even get called, and then he got tackled. We tackled the TCU wide receiver. It's blatantly obvious, but they just looked like they were
we
lost.
Celebrated after that.
Yeah, we looked like we were lost. No guys were looking for the ball. They were just focusing on the guy, tackling TCU wide receivers before the ball got there. A lot of PI penalties, a lot of holdings today. Just really bad all around. I mean, we could talk about the rush defense all day, but the corners weren't covering anything either.
Yeah, when you hold like that, when you're getting beat like a drum. Like, we knew that this TCU receiving core was going to be the best one that we saw all year so far. And I got bad news for the secondary. It's not going to get easier next week. It's really not. They got to figure something out. And even when they were running zone to try to help these guys out, they were letting guys run free. Like I said earlier, just guys running wide open in a zone. I just don't understand it. I don't get it.
One thing that it's sort of a theory that I'm playing with in my head, and I want to run it by you guys. It sort of seems the last 2 weeks like the defensive players are thinking a little harder and not playing football, right? It seemed like the first 3 weeks, they kept it simple and guys weren't thinking too hard so they could just play their game. And the last 2 weeks, the number of mental mistakes we've seen, it's the kind of thing where it doesn't just show up when you give up 3 touchdowns in the first quarter because defensive backs aren't where they need to be. You also see it when you watch David Igwebu and Danny Stutzman just dive full into a clear play action and then take a split second to back up. They're playing slow.
Yeah.
The best thing about these guys is their speed to the football, and they're playing slow. I think they're thinking too much, and the defense is not going to be successful if they're thinking too much. What do y'all think about that? Am I sort of onto something, you think, or is it just hey, we're not executing? Because maybe it's just we're not executing. And today specifically, losing Billy Bowman is a mitigating factor too, right? That hurts everyone. But
I think Brent will tell you they're not executing. But that's just my thought. But you're right about them looking slow. They don't look like they're playing as downhill as they used to, and that might be because they're unsure of what they're looking at, and that's not what you want to see. Because again, that goes back to preparation, and preparation falls on coaching. And so and look, if you're listening to this right now and you're like, oh, these guys want Brent fired, that's not what we're saying. We're not even wanting Ted Root fired.
None of that.
We don't want any of that. And I believe,
a long road.
Yes, I agree. I saw some stuff, people tweeting that in 1999, OU went 7-5 and won the national title next year. I'm not in the mood for that right now. Like, I appreciate where it's coming from, but I don't need it right now.
It's cute, but come on, guys.
Like, we just don't need it right now.
That's not going to make me feel better about today.
Imagine just giving up 3 more losses right now, being like, "Hey, they went 7-5. We could go 7-5."
Dude,
no.
But Mark, to your theory,
that's not the standard.
I'm on mute.
No, you're good, Pat. I got you.
Sorry. Yeah, to your theory, Mark, I love it. I was also thinking the same. Like, maybe we're asking these guys to take a Calc 2 test when they haven't even passed algebra. Like, maybe it's just too complicated and it's making them think too much, and it like loses their actual sense of how they play the football like their own way.
It's a top tier analogy, Patrick.
Thank you.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, that's a top tier analogy. By the way, I just want to read off the stats. I finally found the defensive stats. I couldn't find them. David Igwebu leads the team in tackles with 10 total. Justin Harrington with 8. Danny Stutzman 7. 1 sack for the defense, 4 tackles for loss. That's where we're at.
I want to give my fun fact for
Yes.
BV. Never given up 40 plus points in back-to-back games ever in his career. And that goes back to Clemson, before that, all of that. So that's when you know that the defensive side is just completely lost on all levels, especially when we have a lot of depth on the defensive line. We still play 3 down people, can get no pressure. I think the scheme has got to have to change. I mean, it's clearly not working. So what else can you do? And might as well just throw players in there at this point that will give effort and show energy, because it was very lackluster today. And like they did last week, they played on their heels the entire game. Didn't dictate the offense. They just let Max Duggan and the offensive line, running backs, do whatever they want.
Go ahead, Mark.
That speaks to something that Gan, again, you and I talked about during the game today. Gan and I watched today, guys, together. It was great. Today's game was great together. But we saw different looks throughout the first few weeks as far as 4 guys down, 3 guys down. And today we went specifically 3 guys down, and they gashed us on the ground, right? To the tune of 361 yards rushing. They just kept getting us, and you watch them. And I mean, I haven't watched the game back, obviously, but our linebackers are spread throughout the field because they're spreading receivers out. And so we have our 3 down linemen and 1 backer in the box, and they've got 5 linemen blocking. They're getting an easy 10 yards a carry because we don't even have the bodies where we need them. I think it would behoove us, especially when you lose Billy Bowman, put another guy down there. Try to disrupt them a little bit more at the line of scrimmage, because you're not going to be able to do it further down the field. You've lost your guy to do that.
All right, guys, I think I'm going to get us out of here. We feel like we've...
I can keep complaining. Are you sure?
Yeah, I know.
I'm happy to.
I know you can. I feel like we all can. But the Oklahoma Sooners are 3-2. That's just where we're at. And they fall 55-24. Listen, guys, we're going to have a show for you coming up this week on Wednesday or Thursday, previewing the OU Texas game. A couple of guys will be going to the game. I will not be. I got a wedding. So I got a wedding pre-OU Texas. A post-OU Texas. So I have OU Texas, and then I immediately roll into a wedding. So I should be able to watch the game. But let us know what you thought of the game down below, what you thought of the defense, offense. We read every comment. Really appreciate you guys. Be sure to like, subscribe to the channel. Trying to hit 1,000 subs by the end of the year. Please help us out by doing so. You can find us on Twitter at Program Guys with a Z, Instagram, Program Guys with a Z, our Facebook page, Program Guys Podcast. However you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you get them, guys. Anybody, anything else you want to say real quick before we get out of here?
TCU it's a process. Might be good. Trust the process.
Trust the process. TCU might be good. Matt, anything?
The Red River Showdown. That's our Super Bowl this year.
Sure is.
It might be. All right, boys. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to like, subscribe to the channel. Pat, take us out.
Keep pushing, baby.